Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show. As we reported yesterday, the Trump administration did in 10 months what the Biden administration couldn't or wouldn't do for 4 years. They arrested the suspected January 6th pipe bomber. 30-year-old Brian Cole Jr., a black man from Woodbridge in Northern Virginia, is charged now with transporting an explosive device across state lines with intent to kill or harm and attempted malicious destruction using explosives. Cole faces up to 30 years in prison. He's due in court today, where we should learn even more about him. And while we still do not know specifics about his motive, we told you on AM Update this morning that Cole worked for a bail bonds company run by his father, working to free illegal immigrants from ICE facilities. This is just interesting background on the guy. That's per the Daily Wire. That company unsuccessfully sued the Trump administration over its immigration policies and even hired Benjamin Crump, the attorney who represented Trayvon Martin's family, to accuse a Tennessee prosecutor who was probing the company of racism for that probe. Here to react to this and so much more is Kash Patel, the 9th director of the FBI. I have to tell you about this incredible show hitting stages soon, Shen Yun. In our fast-paced world, it is rare to find something that pulls you into the beauty of tradition like Shen Yun, taking you on a journey through 5,000 years of Chinese culture with dance and music that's captivating. You will see amazing dancers bringing to life myths and legends, heroic warriors and heavenly realms, all in gorgeous costumes and with flips and spins that look effortless yet superhuman. And the orchestra? It is a perfect mix of classic Chinese sounds and full Western ensemble, creating music that tugs at your heartstrings. It weaves in timeless values like kindness, bravery, and balance. Great for date nights, family outings. Kids love the color and action, and it leaves you refreshed and inspired. It's more than entertainment. It is a cultural revival. Go to shenyun.com. That's SHENYUN.com/Megyn to waive fees when you order tickets. Don't miss Shen Yun, where the past comes alive in a spectacular way. Let me start with the news breaking right now from NBC reporting that the suspect is cooperating with the FBI. Is that true?
So, Megan, yes, it's a great coalition that brought us to this point where we arrested the pipe bomber that terrorized our nation 5 years ago. And in terms of what's ongoing, it's a little difficult to talk about because the suspect is now in the court proceedings. But as you would suspect or expect from the FBI, we do engage with all suspects that are arrested to see if they're willing to speak to us. And those matters are ongoing.
Dan Bongino told Hannity last night that you guys have interviewed him at length. Is that something you can provide any color on?
We've sat down with him and talked to him. For us, though, we can't divulge the substance of those conversations because the prosecutors and the Department of Justice are going to be the ones that adjudicate that information as to whether or not they need to use it in a court of law and present it for purposes of indictment and grand jury and further execution of search warrants. So this is a very much an ongoing investigation. We're going to be continuing to conduct multiple search warrants. We're going to continue to put multiple witnesses in grand juries because we want to make sure we've captured the totality of this individual's conduct.
Okay, but he is talking.
He's speaking to us.
Wow. Has he lawyered up?
I can't get into that because it infringes on some of his constitutional rights, and we at the FBI are going to uphold even this individual's constitutional rights to due process.
Let me ask you this question. Have you seen Benjamin Crump at all?
I have not. I have not seen him, but maybe we will later.
You might, yeah, given the family's history from, what we're gathering now, reporting over at the Daily Wire that he represented the dad. Can you outline for us or give us a better feel, Kash, for what was sitting at the FBI for those past 4 years? And then what did you guys add to it? I know you didn't get new tips, but you also talked yesterday at the presser about working with Jeanine Pirro and the DOJ. When you needed a subpoena, they would give it to you because the lawyers need to arm the investigators, the cops, with the tools to get what they need. So what did you add to, and what was already sitting there for those 4 years?
So let's work backwards because executing a search warrant and subpoenas are a position FBI wants to get to. But in order to get there, we have to have probable cause and targets and accounts that we need to examine. So what the FBI did was we went through 3 million lines of evidence in this case. And Deputy Director Bongino spearheaded an effort to create a team here nationally of subject matter experts that came into the FBI and reviewed those 3 million lines of evidence. That included information such as cell phone data, tower dumps, triangulation information. So the FBI has some of the best cell phone analysis systems in the world. We call it a CAS system. And basically we said, hey, let's look at every single phone number again that was in the area. That's what I mean when we said we didn't receive any new information. We just reviewed the information that was already in our holdings in our databases. And when we went through that, we found leads that we then went with our great prosecutors at the Department of Justice and Attorney General Bondi and U.S. Attorney Janine Pirro and said, hey, now we need some search warrants. Now we need search warrants on these providers, social media accounts, email accounts, cell phone accounts, and we need to ultimately execute search warrants of his residence and place of business because that's where this individual went most. And so naturally, we had to develop enough probable cause to get there, and that takes a little bit of time.
Did this guy's name, Brian Cole, exist in the system before you guys found him? You identified him?
That piece of information we'll reveal in court because that's the appropriate place to reveal it in terms of any history or prior contacts with law enforcement. As I said, the investigation's ongoing. So it's not just whether or not he had contact with the FBI. Did he have contact with the state authorities? Did he have contact with the local authorities? Did he have any contact in the juvenile system? Those are all questions we're answering now because we have to send out those leads to our partners after the individual is identified and say, hey, what do you guys have on him? Because we're not done with the investigation. And then we go back to our U.S. attorney partners and DOJ and say, hey, we need some more search warrants. And I'm just making this up in the state of wherever because he lived there for a period of time. Those are things we don't know the definitive answers to just yet, but those are the things we're developing.
The credit card information around his purchases seems clutch. Is that something that you must have gotten that yourselves? Because it seems to me what you're telegraphing is you identified from cell phone data, among other data, cell phone tower data, he was on your list. Mm-hmm. And then you started narrowing the circle. But then at some point you had to get a subpoena for his credit cards because you do require a probable cause to get somebody's credit card data. You can't just get that because you got a list of 10,000. There would have had to be something a little bit more narrowly cast. And then you start like a scene from Homeland on Showtime with Claire Danes and the whiteboard. This is how I picture it, looking at the Visa, the MasterCard, the Home Depot, the Walmart purchases, and cross-pollinating, like the pipe bombs, the end caps, the battery, the kitchen timer, and which person on this list has got who appears on every list. Is that basically how it went down?
So there's multiple lines of effort, as we call it, right, going on at this time. Not only are we looking for credit card information as to his transaction history, we're also looking at his social media accounts, email accounts to see what he put out on the internet and who, if he communicated with anyone. While we're doing that simultaneously, we're also looking at, it's been publicized about the uniqueness of the sneakers. Okay, well, who bought this type of sneaker? And as it's been disclosed in the affidavit, which we can now talk about, this individual bought pipes, end caps, wires, bomb-making material. So those are all pretty good and significant investigative leads in terms of individually. But when you combine them with the multiple lines of effort, the universe of people goes from this down to here. And that's what we had to do. There was, of course, like any investigation like this, which is a massive manhunt, multiple suspects that we have to eliminate along the way because most people or everyone else that didn't do this is innocent. And so we have to work through that process methodically before we just go out and arrest people. And those sort of come in together when we, if you imagine concentric circles, oh, he bought end caps. Okay, did he buy these sneakers? Who was he talking to on this day? Where was his cell phone pinging on this day and this time? At the same time, other suspects along the way were saying, do they have alibis? Were they even around? Why are they suspects? A lot of people are allowed to buy some of these parts individually for actual lawful use. So we can't go out just and arrest those people because they bought one end cap. And so that totality of information, when you go through 3 million lines of evidence, literally, that has to take time to narrow down. And we don't have a computer system that does that. We had humans that we brought in from around the country to do this for hundreds of days and thousands of man hours.
It's crazy. It's incredible to think about. And then on top of it, according to the affidavit, you line all that up with the scanners that have his license plate getting him to the location. I mean, that's a cherry on top of the sundae once you have the cell phone data showing his cell phone at the RNC, at the DNC, at the necessary times. He purchased the pipes, he purchased the end caps, he purchased the timers, he purchased the batteries, the wires and all that. And then whatever else you found on email. And then boom, his car was actually, it delivered him right to the place. And it looks like, according to the affidavit, you had seen him, you were able to place him at the same location earlier, like scouting or buying a meal. The last part of the affidavit suggests he was in that location prior to the date the bombs were planted, possibly scouting, possibly, just checking out the area.
Right. Obviously, we need to match the description of the suspect on video. The video has been publicized for years. But what this FBI did was came in and enhanced the video. I don't know why the prior FBI didn't do that. I don't know why the prior FBI didn't look at the 3 million lines of evidence. I don't know why they didn't use our cell phone capabilities and our technological capabilities at the FBI. The only thing I can come up with is either they were too incompetent in terms of leadership or intentional. And I think it was intentional because it was a further weaponization of law enforcement. So when you match up the suspect's height and physical appearance with things like a license plate reader that attributes to him and further information such as cell phone pings, you're getting into a very small circle of people that it could be. And once we're able to execute law enforcement process and search warrants over these last few months, we were able to produce what he bought, where he bought it, when he bought it, and the history of buying it and how often he bought it. And remember, this kid was 25 years old at the time of the incident. He's now 30 years old. There's a 5-year history of information that the FBI has to go through to make sure we've captured all the information for our prosecuting partners.
He was buying stuff from October of 19 through and actually after this attempted bombing. He kept buying, according to Janine Pirro, even after the pipe bombs were found and did not go off. But it started, originally we thought maybe, okay, there was something about him buying all the stuff on June 1st and June 8th, 2020. What was in the news then? George Floyd had just been killed on May 25th. Could it be related? But the truth is he had started purchasing this stuff as early as October 18th or October of 2019. Before all that, and Kash, what was interesting to me was for that long period from October 19 through January 21, he was buying the material at all these different Home Depots down in Northern Virginia, at a different store that sold, I think, the timers, like sort of the kitchen timers that he used, or the 9-volt batteries, I think it was. And a lot of the purchases in cash, but a lot of the purchases on his own credit card. So in some ways he was clever in trying to cover up his tracks, and in others, so not clever. I mean, does that make sense to you?
Look, we this year alone, this FBI has arrested 25,000 violent felons. That's twice as many from last year, 110% increase, literally. And if you look across all those cases and all those criminals, they vary in how they have their operational security, whether it's good, bad, or in between. So it's almost impossible to decipher exactly every single piece of information that led this individual to say, I'll use my credit card on this day, but I'll use cash on the next day. We'll try to develop that out so we can provide the public with a clear picture. But it's not unusual to have mixed operational security, really good on one day, and then maybe a slip up on the next day. But also,
big time.
5 years passed. 5 years have passed. So this individual was basically out there saying, I got away with it. I mean, he's not a stupid person, and he sees the news and he sees the videos and he sees the commentary on social media and on TV, and he's probably watching it saying, okay, maybe I'm off the hook. We don't know the definitive answer.
How did you find the cash purchases? There's information in the affidavit about how you guys found out, let's say, I think it was on the 9-volt batteries. Right. You saw him purchasing some in, I think, November of 2020, and that was credit card, but then also in December 2020, and that was cash. How did you track down his cash purchases?
This is what FBI agents do. When you put them out in the field to investigate crimes, this is what they're trained to do. They go out to the community. They go out to the stores. They go out and use video surveillance. They go out and say, hey, this is a local community in Northern Virginia that this individual has supposedly resided in for a period of time. Do you know this guy? Did he come into your store? I'm just speaking generally. Did he buy this specific product? Because in a lot of these stores, it's unusual to walk in and buy one or two of these things at any one time. Did he do it again over the course of time? And this is just the great investigative work of tireless agents who went out there and repeatedly used these skills. And look, along the way, Megyn, there's a lot of strikeouts, but this FBI was not taken off target by those strikeouts. We stayed on mission until we connected with the stores and the service providers and the accounts and the information behind him. And also, once we figured out that this individual is a likely suspect, we're not going to just leave him be in the neighborhood. This FBI creatively, successfully, and
Right.
surreptitiously monitored him because we wanted to make sure there was no future casualties. Because remember, Megyn, he made bombs that actually worked. They just didn't go off. Thank God. It's not that he made a device and screwed it up and it was never going to go off. Thankfully, it didn't go off, but this individual had the capability and mindset to make bombs that actually worked.
And Jeanine Pirro told Laura Ingraham last night that when you arrested him yesterday, there were additional bomb-making materials in his home, including yesterday. Is that true?
That's correct.
Wow. Do you think he was making another?
That is the piece of the puzzle we're putting together. So let me walk you through something that I haven't talked about yet. When we go hit this individual's house and his place of work, it's not like we're going to hit the house of a criminal suspect for fraud, or we're going to hit the house of, say, John Bolton. It's very different. We know the individual is making bombs. So we have to send in an entire bomb tech squad team to safeguard the house. That takes hours and hours. And then only once it's cleared safe, do we send in our evidence response teams to go in there. They're there. They're still there. They're still going through it because that's how long it takes, because we can't put FBI agents in harm's way just to collect evidence. So that's why this search is taking so long and will continue, in my opinion, probably throughout the weekend and into the coming weeks. And we're going to start talking to his family members and associates and putting those people probably, in my opinion, in grand juries. But that is a decision up to the Department of Justice, and we'll work with them to make sure we get every single witness they need in the box.
What was his reaction when he was arrested?
I can't really characterize that because that's going to be presented ultimately in court. We have it documented, and it's a piece of the evidentiary chain, and we want that to be presented without tarnishing our judicial record. So we're working closely with Jeanine Pirro and the Attorney General to make sure that information is tightly held till we submit it publicly in court.
Let me ask you this. Now, having had 24 hours to process this since, post-arrest, is there any doubt in your mind you have the right man?
We've got the right guy, based on the totality of information and other information we haven't publicly released yet that we just can't right now. I know the public wants to know everything right away, but I want to remind the American public how this FBI operates. Yes, we are the most transparent FBI in history. We have provided 40,000 pages of documents to Congress versus Ray, who provided 13,000 in 7 years, and Comey provided 3,000 in 3.5 years. But while we're simultaneously doing that and doing shows like yours to inform the public, we are reaching the point of accountability that everybody wants. Nobody wants this individual, the pipe bomber, to walk away freely. Nobody wants us to not.
Yeah, you got to protect the investigation. I totally get
right.
that.
And I understand that there's frustration, but that's how we do it here.
All right, let me ask you a couple of other questions that may fall within the bucket of can't go there yet, but let's try. You mentioned his social media and emails. Is there anything that you gleaned out of there when it comes to motive that you can share?
Especially when it comes to motive, that's just not something we can address right now.
Will we hear that at the arraignment today? Will we hear more about that today?
That's up to the prosecutors, the timeline as to which they wish to reveal that information. They are the ones who have to present the case to the judge and the jury, so they'll make those calls. We at the FBI will make sure they have the totality of that information to use at their disposal when they decide to.
Do you believe, as of this hour, that he acted alone?
We're still looking at a lot of information. Right now, we believe that we have the suspect responsible for the pipe bomb. But what this FBI will do is continue to interview individuals, continue to execute search warrants. And if anyone contacted him, if anyone helped him hide from law enforcement, or if anyone helped him actually conduct this bombing campaign, we'll find them and we will arrest them.
NBC News reporting this morning that the man charged, this man, Brian Cole, told the FBI he believed conspiracy theories about the 2020 election, citing two people familiar with the matter. Can you comment on that?
No, I'm not going to comment on anonymous sources, and especially not comment on anything he did or didn't say pursuant to a law enforcement interview.
They're basically trying to suggest that he was somebody who believed the election was stolen from Trump. Do you have any idea of political ideology of this guy?
All of that is currently being examined. Literally, we just got to the individual yesterday morning, and we've been working with him and our prosecutors to sit down and make sure while we interrogate him, and if he is cooperating, we are able to constitutionally obtain information that we can later use in court. So information like that will be made public through the prosecution.
Okay. And also, I got to ask, any connection to Antifa, to BLM, or to law enforcement?
All of those things are being investigated.
Okay. Let's keep going because there's a lot. You mentioned that you think it was intentional that the Chris Wray FBI did not get to the bottom of this. Mm-hmm. Why? Because, in my experience covering government, 99% of the time, the safe bet is on incompetence. But what was it about this guy that would make them not want to hunt him down? Or are you suggesting it's not that they knew it was this guy and weren't interested, they just weren't interested in general?
I think it was a leadership decision. Look, we came in and wiped out the leadership that weaponized the FBI. We put in new field leaders across the country. We sent 1,000 agents into the field across America to literally hit the streets and do the investigative work it takes to bring individuals like this to justice. That was a huge tectonic shift in the mindset of how this place was institutionalized by Washington, D.C. and prior leadership. And as I said at the beginning of the interview, we made the decision to go in and re-examine the lines of evidence that they had in the cell phone data and the tower dumps. Why the prior administration didn't use the technical capabilities that were present, I don't know, other than to say they intentionally decided not to do it, and or they were satisfied that this individual who is captured on CCTV putting pipe bombs at the RNC and DNC at the United States Capitol, the prior administration was satisfied with, we're just running out of road, so we're going to move on to Arctic frost and continue the Russiagate weaponization. Those were intentional decisions. Those took FBI agents off target of important missions like this and arresting violent offenders around the country, which we have removed those bracelets from our investigators and our intel analysts and support staff.
Here's Democratic Senator Mark Warner of Virginia and his hot take on the arrest. Watch.
But I got to tell you, it kind of makes me, looking at this crowd doing a victory lap, when all the senior FBI officials across all key divisions have been fired for political purposes, when in some field offices up to 45% of the FBI officers who were doing things like counter-espionage and cyber have been assigned to do immigration cases. It's a little rich that they're saying America's safer. How much earlier could we have caught this guy if resources hadn't been diverted? And I hope it would also remind folks that on January 6th, I was here at the Capitol on January 6th. It was an ugly, awful day. And this administration and this president basically pardoned all the perpetrators. It's that kind of picking and choosing of facts from this crowd that makes me a little bit crazy.
Your reaction to that?
I got a lot. So let me take that in sequential order. First of all, the victims of this bombing campaign were our elected representatives on both sides of the aisle. And I haven't received phone calls from anyone except Republicans on this matter. I spoke to Speaker Mike Johnson, and the deputy spoke to a lot of other individuals. And we want to protect all victims. That's what we did here. This wasn't a political investigation. This individual wanted to blow up Democrats, Republicans, and innocent American civilians. Now, when it comes to us taking people off mission, we have never been more on mission. We have this year alone arrested 35% more spies from China, Russia, Iran, and the DPRK than last year alone. If we were off mission, how did we successfully take down 35% more spies? If we were off mission, how are our domestic terrorism arrests up 30% from last year alone? If we were off mission, how have we dismantled 1,800 criminal gang enterprises? That is up 35%. Megyn, we have found 6,000 children and identified 6,000 children. That is an increase of 23% from last year alone. We've seized enough fentanyl to kill 127 million Americans. That's up 30% from last year alone. So if we weren't doing the work, the mission of the FBI to defend the homeland and crush violent crime, then what are these political statements about? In my opinion, they're just that. Political statements that are yelling back into an empty ether, but this FBI is doing the work. And I want to highlight one thing because I know it's near and dear to your heart. the work this FBI is doing against crimes against children. We have arrested people, child predator and child predator rings, up 15%. On top of that, the sick individuals that are preying on our kids online in these what we call nihilistic violent extremist networks like 764. Do you know how many arrests we have this year alone? We are up 510% from last year alone.
Wow.
And we've arrested four of the FBI's top 10 most wanted fugitives in the world in 9 months. That equals the total number of the entirety of the prior administration. So if we are off mission, if we are politicizing it, if we are not protecting our country against spying activity, if we are not on the counterterrorism mission. Oh, and by the way, we got the Abbey Gate bomber too. I forgot to mention that. If we are not defending the homeland and every single American's rights, I've never seen an FBI more on mission. And the fact that the Democrats want to politicize this shows you the lengths that they will go to. I don't need a call or a thank you from them. I want them to know that irrespective of what they say, me, the deputy, and this FBI are going to continue to stay on mission and protect all Americans from all walks of life, regardless of people and their motivations.
Did you get a phone call from Kamala Harris at all?
No.
Did you guys find a social media footprint for this guy at all and then like take it down? Because one doesn't exist right now that we can see publicly.
So in terms of taking it down, that's up to the service providers ultimately working with us. And in terms of what we're doing on his social media accounts, we've issued search warrants to those accounts. Some of it's concluded, some of it's ongoing. So we'll make that public at the appropriate time if there's.
Okay, so there were social media posts. We haven't seen them.
There may have been, and we're still working through a lot of that information.
Okay, this is all great. Thank you so much for sharing so much with us. We appreciate it. Let me hit some other items that are in the news around the FBI. I'll start with the one that's probably most important to our audience, and that's the Charlie Kirk investigation, Kash. Obviously, this audience includes huge fans of Charlie's. He came on this show once every 3 weeks for years. And so we're all watching that one very carefully. Let me start with this, the most obvious. Do you believe that we have the proper suspect in custody? Do you believe that Tyler Robinson is, in fact, the man who killed Charlie Kirk?
Yes.
Do you believe he acted with the help of anyone else?
This investigation is being led by the Utah state authorities because it is a murder investigation. So the FBI is a supporting role in the investigative process. And so what we're doing is the same thing we did in the pipe bomb investigation. The investigation is ongoing for us. If there's any new leads or tips, we are exhausting them with search warrants and legal process. But at the same time, we are working with the prosecutors in Utah to make sure we don't screw up their investigation. Because again, the worst outcome would be if the guy that killed Charlie Kirk walks out of a United States courtroom in the state of Utah. And so it's a delicate balance again, but there is no way this FBI is going to stop that investigation until it reaches its all-conclusive endpoint.
Do you believe any foreign government had a role in his assassination?
At this time, the FBI doesn't have credible information to connect any foreign governments to it. But as I said, we are continuing to take investigative leads. We're not done. Just because we arrest someone, just like in the pipe bomber case, we don't just say, okay, we're done, on to the next. The investigative team continues to work with the Utah authorities, and they're deriving their own leads and coming back to us and say, hey, can you look at this piece of information? Can we get a search warrant on this account? What about this individual who is located in X, Y, or Z? We're tracking all that down.
Do you have any credible reason to believe that anyone connected with the Turning Point organization had anything to do with Charlie's death?
Zero.
On the subject, there's been an allegation made by prominent podcaster Candace Owens that she's received a death threat, a credible death threat from the French, that a threat has been made on her life, and that the French, she's been told, also may have had a role in Charlie's assassination. Have you looked into either of those? Do you believe she's received a credible death threat from the French, or that the French had something potentially to do with Charlie's death?
Any American that receives a death threat from overseas or anywhere in America is going to be fully investigated. So we're not going to turn our eye away from that investigation or any others. If there's anything to it, this FBI will respond to it.
Okay, but so far, no.
So we are just looking at everything that comes in. We're not going to reject any piece of information. If someone feels that their life is being threatened, we are, of course, looking at it.
I can verify that myself because we've received some very dark things here at our show, and you guys have always been very responsive in looking hard at the people who send them. Can I ask you, Kash, the text messages between Tyler Robinson and his roommate Lance Twiggs, the reason a lot of people think Tyler didn't do it is because they sound kind of fake. You know, the wording just sounds a little strange. Like, I thought they caught the person, or no, you weren't the one who did it, right? I am. I'm sorry. They go on from there. Why did I do it? Yeah, I had enough of his hatred, and so on. Do you have any reason to believe that text exchange was not real between them for whatever reason, potentially even having been orchestrated between the two of them?
Look, I understand the emotion behind this case. Charlie was my friend. He was your friend. He was assassinated in the most brutal way in a public forum where he was trying to have engagement with the youth of the United States of America. And while I was representing the White House at Ground Zero in New York City on 9/11, we made the decision to pivot immediately and fly out to Utah to make sure we executed this manhunt. We went out there, the FBI seized the video evidence and put it out to the public immediately. And then this individual was caught in 33 hours. And so I understand that there's so much charged emotion on the other evidence that was collected, the notes that you were talking about, the text message, excuse me. And we present that information to the prosecutors to make the determination based on the evidence we have as to whether or not they were real. I can't stylize or comment on it because it's an ongoing investigation, but I don't believe the prosecutors in the state of Utah would be using any piece of information or evidence that was not credible.
Last but not least on Charlie, there were texts by certain trans individuals online before the assassination talking about something big is going to be happening, and then after he was killed saying, and there it is, leading many of us to wonder whether there was some sort of Transtifa connection to the murder, or at least maybe some tip-off to the community. Is that under investigation?
That is most definitely under investigation, and we've disclosed a lot of that to the prosecution, or all of it that we have, and they've made some of it public to include that he was in a relationship with an individual who was part of that community, and that he was engaged in communications with other individuals in that community. But as to how they relate to the prosecution, that's up to the Utah prosecutors to say, we need this in court, and we're going to hold it till we release it, till his trial.
The shooter of Donald Trump and 3 other people at his rally, Crooks, was the subject of a couple of media reports about a week ago, Tucker Carlson and then Miranda Devine at the New York Post, saying that he had extensive online contact. He used to be a lefty, he used to be a righty, then he switched to more of a radical leftist, that he had contact from people online suggesting possible outside involvement in this assassination attempt against Trump. And then Miranda adding that he had connections to the trans furry community and was going by, I think, they, them. Can you confirm any of that?
So this is the last question I got to take because I got to head out after this. But what we said was we responded publicly, and I'll rest on our statements that we put out to the public about any of those connections. We've briefed the president about this. He's the victim in this case. He's been fully satisfied with our investigative work and his briefings. We also have to honor the rights of the other victims in this case. But again, that case and any case that we have remains quote unquote open for purposes of new leads. And we have refuted any information that we can publicly because we realize it's a very public case. But at the same time, we are going to exhaust any new investigative lead that we have, but we've definitively responded to that online.
Okay, I apologies. Your people told us we had till 10:30 just a second ago. But can I ask you one final question on Epstein before you go? Do you have time for that?
Sure.
We're expecting to get a big tranche of documents from the DOJ pursuant to this new law that President Trump signed into a bill he signed into law recently on Epstein disclosures. You guys have to be part of that because you're connected with the DOJ. What do you expect we're going to learn from the new revelations?
We, as we've always been, are committed to providing every piece of information we can on this matter and any other matter. And so we're working with our partners at DOJ to abide by the court orders that are already in place, the sealing orders that are in place, and the protective orders that are in place. And also the FBI isn't in possession of any of the information from the estate, even though we've asked them and everybody else for any new information on this matter so that we ourselves can investigate it. So we're going to put out literally as much as we can. that the law allows under this new law that the president signed. But also, we weren't here when the investigation started. We weren't here when Acosta came in and limited his investigation about Epstein's activity to a certain narrow period of time and then executed limited search warrants, which the courts later utilized to give him a deal and say, you're prohibited from going back and you cannot release this material. So we are going to release everything that we possibly can.
Very good. Listen, it's been a great day for law enforcement and truly for the men and women of the FBI who, along with you and Dan Bongino, have been besmirched, attacked, undermined, and I'm sure are appreciating the win. I mean, this is just such a win for the country. God knows what this guy would have done in the future. I think of somebody like the Unabomber who got away with it for years. And just because those bombs didn't go off in 2021 doesn't mean there wasn't another one in store. Congratulations, Kash, to you and the men and women who work for you.
Thanks, Megyn, so much for having me. I appreciate your time.
Good luck with everything. Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Good luck with everything today. We'll be watching. I have to tell you about dupe.com. This holiday season, if you have your eye on something like a designer bag, listen to this. Dupe.com is a genius site that finds identical versions of expensive products for less. Enter a link and Dupe can show you the same style for hundreds of dollars less. And it's not just bags. Think cozy couches, lamps, even holiday gifts you've been dreaming about. Why pay thousands when you can pay just a fraction of that? Millions of people are already using Dupe, and it's so easy. You just type dupe.com, then a backslash, and then any product URL, or you can go to dupe.com and just paste the link. If that's not for you, you can upload an image to instantly find affordable alternatives. No account, no sign up, totally free. The holidays are expensive enough. Why overspend when you do not have to? Just type dupe.com / before any product URL in your browser, and boom, it instantly finds you more affordable alternatives. They even have an app and a browser extension. No account or sign up required. It's completely free to use. Stop overspending on brand names and start saving on holiday gifts with dupe.com. Welcome back to the Megyn Kelly Show. There is breaking news regarding the D.C. pipe bomber, accused, I should say, Brian Cole. Multiple outlets now reporting that Cole told FBI investigators he believed conspiracy theories about the 2020 election and has confessed that he planted the bombs. To go over the latest reporting, as well as our interview with FBI Director Kash Patel that we taped earlier this morning, I'm joined by John Solomon, founder of Just the News. Also with us to take a dive into the criminal mind of the alleged pipe bomber is James R. Fitzgerald. James is a retired FBI criminal profiler who was involved in high-profile cases like the search for the Unabomber, the D.C. sniper, and the anthrax investigation, which he solved. So he's been through this a time or two. John, Jim, great to see you both. Thank you for being here. So we taped that interview with Kash from 9:45 to 10:30 this morning. The news that the suspect was cooperating and had allegedly said he believed the conspiracy theories had broken, and I did ask him about it, you heard there, and he refused to comment on that. He did say the suspect was speaking to the FBI, but would not sign on to anything about him believing in conspiracy theories. But it started off with an NBC report. It spread from there. Now Fox News is reporting it as well, that specific item. It's kind of everywhere. John Solomon, your reporting is the best in the business. What are you hearing about that?
I just confirmed with FBI officials that he made such an utterance that he at one point he said that he thought the election was stolen, that he has been making statements implicating him in the pipe bombing. But it's early in the investigation, and I caution everybody that these cases are complicated. You have a person who has some social phobia, it appears, based on the early reports, and that is consistent with the FBI says. He's sort of a withdrawn fellow. The FBI Behavioral Lab is going to do a full analysis. They're going to wage his statements against his behavior, and it's going to take us days to really know a motive. One thing I'll point out just from the early criminal information is way before anyone knew the 2020 election would end in such a dispute and be called by some stolen. This guy was already buying pipe bomb materials in the summer and fall of 2019 and continuing well after the January 6th event. So those are factoids that are going to weigh in. Jim knows this because he was one of the greatest profilers in FBI history. But it's going to be a while before we know. Everybody wants it clean, right, left thing. It's going to take a while to figure a guy out like this and make sure they understand his motive. So early utterances aren't always the final outcome of where you find a case ends. But it is true he made those statements. He's made a lot of statements. Some of them are contradictory, and I think the FBI is going to weigh all that before they come to a true analysis of what this guy's motive was.
I mean, one interesting thing that Kash said was this is not a dumb person who they have in custody right now. And there's a very interesting theory going around online right now about whether if his motivation for this attempted bombing was in fact related in any way to his belief that Trump actually won, what was going to happen on J6, whether he would somehow be included in so arguing that that was his motivation in Trump's pardon of the January 6ers. Now, I don't think so, because Trump's pardon covers anyone connected with the January 6th insurrection, riot, whatever you want to call it. This guy's behavior all happened on J5 and before. He planted the bombs on J5. I don't think just even according to the letter of the pardon, he would be included. But it's an interesting question about whether he's clever enough to say that was the motivation in an effort to get himself within the four corners of the J6 pardons. Anyway, all of this will be debated at length down the lane. Jim, let me start with you broad-based, because you bring the most expertise to this. What you heard from Kash, what you heard from the FBI and the DOJ yesterday. Tell us your impressions overall right now.
Yeah, I've been in the middle of investigations. I was right outside the room when John Muhammad was being interviewed, the DC sniper, watching on video and helping the state police talk to him. And there were leaks that went out later that day that turned out to be not exactly accurate. Same with Call Me God instead of I Am God on the tarot card. So, John, I trust your reportage and the people you're talking to. But let's be a little bit careful about everything that's being said right now. And I know Kash was, as I listened to the interview there. And and I told a few other people, unless this guy Cole is also doing plumbing work on the side, he's buying these galvanized pipes and end caps, et cetera, way back in October of 2019, well before the election was even occurred, a year and a month. So this guy had a plan. He was, as talking to your producer, Megyn, I was saying he may be someone of a bomber without a cause, putting these bombs together, looking for an excuse, trying to figure out who the best target would be, representational targets. But it would be like Kaczynski bombing airlines, universities, but then also a group of Luddites at the same time. I mean, that would have made no sense for Ted Kaczynski. And this guy hitting the DNC and the RNC on the same night, fortunately with devices, IEDs, that did not actually detonate. It's incongruous. And I just think he really didn't know exactly what he was doing. And he may be using as a convenient excuse that, the election was contested, it wasn't fair to Trump or whomever, and that is why he used that reason to perhaps try to kill someone, but certainly make it look like he wanted to hurt someone.
I do wonder. It's a very interesting mystery. Just looking at the FBI affidavit about his purchases, here's just one example where they say, this is on page 3 of the affidavit, both pipe bombs were manufactured using end caps, which were used to close the ends of the 8-inch pipe. The pipe bombs placed outside of the RNC and DNC contained a mix of both black and galvanized end caps. The end caps had markings consistent with the pipe manufacturer's product labeling. Cole, the defendant, purchased a total of 12 black end caps and 2 galvanized from 4 different Home Depots in Northern Virginia on or about the following dates: October 22nd, 2019, March 10th, 2020, June 20th, 2020, July 8th, 2020, and November 16th, 2020. So, I mean, only one of those dates is after the November election. All of the others precede the election, precede any hint of, Trump losing, contesting the loss. As I mentioned to Kash, when I first saw these dates, like June, some of the other dates that he made purchases on include June 1st and June 8th. I thought, oh, maybe it's a George Floyd thing, which happened May 25th, a week prior. But that doesn't track either because, as you pointed out, John, he made purchases October 22nd, 2019, long before George Floyd. So over the course of October of 2019 through and including up to January 2021, he was buying parts for this thing and assembling this thing. And that's one of the big mysteries here. Like, what was the plan? Like, how, I guess I'll stick with you on it, Jim. How will we ever figure that out?
Well, again, the original nickname for the Unabomber was the Junkyard Bomber, when he was, in fact, gathering his parts and components. And he would hand make many of them, take nails and saw little screw slots into them. He'd rip the skins off the batteries to make sure even the lot number couldn't be traced to, the southwest of the U.S., whatever facility was there. So he was putting a lot of his parts together there too. And that magic 6 years that the Unabomber took off from 87 to 93 with no bombings, we know he was continuing his experiments, quote unquote. They're the words he used in his journals and his notes in the woods of Montana when he was putting those devices together. So, and I'll say this too, the sophistication of these devices of the J5 bomber were not all that high or well, I'll use the word sophisticated again. With the kitchen timer, many devices are motion sensitive devices to them, or plungers of some sort that when someone moves it, picks it up, it goes off. But a 12-hour, I believe it's 12-hour target kitchen timer, that's kind of going old school that you'd see on the old, Roadrunner cartoons or something like that. So I'm not sure where this guy was getting his DIY information to build a device, but he wanted to make it look pretty. He had some homemade black powder. I'm not sure where that came from, but you do have to be careful putting pipe bombs together because you're threading on the end cap. And if there's any little black powder in the thread part, that thing can blow up on you and take hands off or worse and kill the person. So if luckily he made it out at least one piece in that regard for his sake. So yeah, the motion, or I should say the motivation behind this guy is still unknown, but it goes back several years. He was mission oriented. I say several years, at least, 15, 16 months. He was mission oriented. We just don't know what the heck that mission was yet. And whether it was the election, he just may be using that as an excuse. But of course, his social media indicators and emails and text messages to people may give the FBI more clues then.
Well, John, Kash was somewhat evasive on he had to be because he doesn't want to get ahead of the arraignment later, but on the social media. But for sure, they found this kid, now he's 30, this guy's social media, have pulled it. He said that they got a subpoena for the companies, and there's going to be a ton there, don't you think? Because
yes.
That's got to be how he figured out how to make a pipe bomb. He had no friends. He worked at his dad's bail bond company. He wasn't at a busy corporation. He spoke with no one. The guy sounds like he was, almost autistic in his social communications. Sure. In fact, I think the grandmother just gave an interview suggesting exactly that to the New York Post. So there's going to be something on that social media showing how he figured out how to do this.
Yeah, listen, ironically, he went to the same high school as my son. He lived right around the corner from my house where I live in Prince William County, Virginia. Never met him. But there are some anomalies. And by the way, everything Jim has said in the last segment, the last few points, exactly what the FBI is saying right now. This is exactly the way the case unfolds. He's a smart kid, but reclusive and maybe even on the spectrum. People have used that term to me. Again, that's a medical term, but sometimes it just has a public, meaning to it. But someone who builds a bomb with a 1-hour timer and plants it the night before must know that the timer is not going to go off. If it doesn't go off the night before, it hasn't gone off, right? The timer is expired. What was that motive? Those are the sort of things that the behavioral analysis unit will be doing at the FBI lab. His social media, they've been monitoring. This is something that I reported earlier today. It's very important. They were onto this guy about 3-4 weeks ago. They monitored him daily. They had eyes on him 24/7. They had a surveillance team on him to make sure he didn't do something before they rolled him up. They've known and watched this kid probably for 4 or 5 weeks since they put all the evidence together with the new Fresh Eyes team. They're going to know a lot more about him than they're going to tell us for a while because they're going to have to piece this together. And there are lots of anomalies. Why do you start in 2019? Why do you not execute until January 21? Did you execute other pipe bombs that didn't go off that we haven't found? Did you have other plots that you decided not to do? Kash said that in my interview with him last night. We're looking to see if he was involved in other plots or attacks. There's a lot that'll happen, but we should jump to no conclusions early. I mean, Jim's advice is exactly what my FBI sources are saying.
Stand by 1 second. Got to take a quick break. So much more to go over. We'll be right back with John and Jim. More people today are looking beyond the standard approach when it comes to their health, especially in the fight against cancer. Two medications you've probably heard about, ivermectin and mebendazole, are being researched for their off-label potential to support cancer treatment. Studies suggest they may help inhibit cancer cell growth and make certain therapies more effective. All Family Pharmacy makes access to these trusted meds simple. Every order is reviewed by a licensed doctor for safety, and prescriptions are provided when appropriate. It's a pharmacy that believes you should have the right to choose what's best for your health and not be limited by politics or big corporations. All Family Pharmacy offers ivermectin, mebendazole, and over 200 other essential medications, all shipped straight to your door. Visit allfamilypharmacy.com/Megyn. Use the code Megyn10 to save 10% on your order. That's allfamilypharmacy.com/Megyn to learn more. I've been talking a lot about Riverbend Ranch because I love their steaks. Well, this holiday season, express your love with a very special gift of premium steaks from Riverbend Ranch. They have spectacular beef bundles that are wonderful gifts to friends and family. Their prime rib roast and holiday bundles are only available while supplies last, and they're going fast. For the last 35 years, Riverbend Ranch has been creating an elite Angus herd by using ultrasound technology to identify genetically superior cattle with a focus on flavor and tenderness. All Riverbend Ranch cattle are born and raised in the USA. They never use growth hormones or antibiotics, and the beef is processed right at the ranch in their award-winning USDA-inspected processing facility. Avoid the costly middlemen because the beef is sent directly from Riverbend Ranch to your home. This is not your average black Angus beef. Order from riverbendranch.com. Use the promo code Megyn for $20 off your first order, and let me know what you think. riverbendranch.com, promo code Megyn. Welcome back to the Megyn Kelly Show. John Solomon and James Fitzgerald are back with me now. So, John, let me stick with you for 1 second. We expect this guy to be arraigned later today. And both Dan Bongino last night and Kash Patel with me this morning suggesting we're going to learn a lot more then. What do you think we're going to learn?
We'll probably learn a little bit about the social media posts or anything that the FBI learned that might be motivational. They'll try to start to give us a sense of what they think his motive was on that day or his thinking was on that day, whether they believe he had any co-conspirators, whether his parents had any inkling what he was doing. I mean, he lived in his mom's house, apparently was assembling these pipe bombs there. That's certainly the inference in the affidavit. What does that mean? What did she think was going on in the house? So there'll be a lot of things that, the little tidbits today, but even though we'll get some direction today, it's going to take a few weeks before the FBI comes to a final assessment of what this young man was thinking. If he did in fact plant these bombs, what was his ultimate goal, and whether he had other plans because he started doing this much earlier. So we'll get a little taste today, and then probably in the next couple of weeks, we'll get a more complete picture. And Congress is also going to be briefed today at 2 o'clock. Some of the key committees, including Chairman Barry Loudermilk on the J6 committee. So Congress will get some information today, too, that could be interesting as well.
So we understand he lived in a $611,000 house in Virginia with his mom. Look, the parents were divorced. The dad runs this bail bonds company. The dad sounds like, I don't know if I can fairly call him a BLMer, but he certainly was kind of active on that front. The Daily Wire reporting that he accused this DA who was looking into his bail bonds company of targeting a minority-owned company, played the race card, hired Benjamin Crump, which is like, hello, that's one man off of Al Sharpton. All of his complaints along those lines were rejected. It turns out there were some real problems with the bail company. So that's the dad, split from the mom. The mom, Jim, we saw her social media last night. The team and I went through it. Looks very sweet. I can't find anything out about her job, but she seems like a really sweet lady. She's posting things about like how she's in a sewing club. She is posting pictures of her kids who are, now older, about how much they make up her heart and how much she loves them. She's got sweet pictures of herself with friends. I mean, like, in no way does she seem like a radical protest kind of person, even political at all. Every post is loving and about friendship or family and so on. And then you got the son. And I think he's got maybe a couple of siblings, but the son, the one who's been arrested, is Brian Cole Jr. And this is what his grandmother, Loretta, told the Post about him. Quote, "He's almost autistic-like because he doesn't understand a lot of stuff. I hope he's not talking." She also alleged he's very naive. He would not hurt a fly. He's just not that kind of person. I don't believe this at all. He's not a terrorist. Now, what's your nana gonna say about you? Pretty much anyone's nana would say that about them. But everyone's saying that this kid was like reclusive, couldn't make eye contact with people. So how do you, as an FBI guy, how do you factor in those parents and this news we've heard about the son as of today?
Well, it's the old nature versus nurture. Apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I mean, certainly with the mother doesn't seem that way. You mentioned, or others have mentioned, and the grandmother has mentioned, autism, could be Asperger's syndrome. A lot of people forget Kaczynski with his defense team. They were actually floating the Asperger's syndrome as part of their defense, but Kaczynski fought it off. He didn't want to be seen in any way, shape, or form as having mental incapacities whatsoever. So look, I mean, he's 25 years old. He's even though he's living at home, we don't know what kind of travels he had. Did he visit other people? Did he go away for long weekends? I hate the word radicalized, but was he on these different websites and people were convincing him this, that, or the other? I have a feeling this guy operated pretty much as an island, as an isolationist, and he just came up with his own ideas along the way. They fomented perhaps for years. Then all of a sudden, hey, a pipe bomb of some sort would be a good idea. I know, I'll make 2 of them. I'll start way back in October of 2019, before a whole lot of controversies even kicked in. It's pre-COVID, certainly pre-George Floyd, pre any election anomalies, however you want to characterize those. So this guy, there were seeds planted in him. Again, nature, nurture, it'll take time to determine that. But at some point, he decided to lash out. Now, there are different ways of lashing out. He could have been a spree killer. He could have been a serial killer. He could have been, someone who, burned a narcissist, burned buildings down. He decided to make these bombs and then go and basically place them. And bombers are their own separate ilk, especially serial bombers. And the more successful, or the more times they plant a device, an IED, improvised explosive device, and in fact it detonates, the better they get, the more proud they are of themselves. This guy had great pride, no doubt, in the construction of these 2 devices. They didn't go off. He was probably okay with that. Maybe he didn't truly want to hurt anyone. I don't want to give that to him as a criminal defense at all, but just making those bombs and causing the uproar that he did. And again, at these 2, if you will, almost polar opposite, targets, certainly on a political scale, it seems to make one or the other would have made a lot more sense than both. But he chose to do it this way.
That's totally right.
And he just, and I said to your producer earlier, maybe he's into gaming, and this was like and the walk, I finally got that. I watched several times the video the FBI put out only back in October. It should have been out much sooner, of course, by the other administration. But just watching him walk aimlessly along the streets in DC, alleys, stopping, double backing, waving to police cars, that caused a whole big conspiracy theory, of course, which no one could rule out. And back then, was it a woman? Was it a man? This whole gate analysis people were doing. I don't know how much that played in, but there's just so much there with this guy. But this may have just been some sort of an intellectual, mental challenge for him. And whether he's happy or not happy that the devices didn't detonate and no one was hurt, we'll have to find that out. But certainly that's to his advantage that no one was hurt in terms of these charges. So a lot of questions about this guy.
John, we heard Kash say that one of the things they absolutely would do, he spoke sort of generally, but he was obviously talking about this case, is check with local authorities, with state authorities, and with juvenile authorities to see if there's any record. Because this guy graduated from high school, the one around the corner from you, where your son went, in 2013, right? In 2013, did not go to college, But for sure, they're looking into whether he has some sort of a record. That just seemed to be a red flag to me, that they may have found something on the juvenile record, which would be under seal, which would not be accessible by the media, but by law enforcement, it would be. And that's one of the many things I'm sure they're going to look into. It's not unusual to see somebody who is potentially on the spectrum, as the grandmother says, who is brilliant, who's actually very, very smart, but has zero social skills. That combination is actually kind of fairly common.
It is. And, sometimes in that loneliness, was a theory that one of the people I was talking to last night about, if you're trapped in that sort of world of isolation because you're socially awkward, you're on the spectrum, so you have difficulty in the social world, sometimes doing something like this is simply a thrill adventure. And we're trying to ascribe a political motive, but it was just Ferris Bueller's Day Out, and I'm going to do something crazy today and see what happens. And so we just don't know yet. And that's one of the many theories that I know the FBI is looking at today. Was this just a thrill adventure tied to the headlines at the time, and it didn't really have a political motivation? There is something unique that we found recently on the videotape. Chairman Barry Loudermilk's team in Congress, House Judiciary Subcommittee, found it. On his journey there, when you looked at the original FBI map, it looks like he's walking all around. But at one point, he actually kneels down and sits for a period that we previously didn't know about. It was at the Congressional Black Caucus Institute building. And that, on the map, it just showed it as part of the journey. But he actually stops here. My understanding, that was a very important moment there because he was long enough there where no one else is visible in the picture. They knew they had the right phone. It's one of the few places he kneels down. And there's a moment where the phone pings are multiple over a period of 30, 40, 50 seconds. And so that's interesting. Did he pick that for some reason? Was he just simply tired and needed to kneel down for a second, take a break? Was he thinking of putting a bomb there and then decided not to do it? Those are all things I'm sure he's being questioned about now. But that was a part that 4.5 years later, all of a sudden you see this new video footage, like, wait, he stopped there for a second. He kneels down for a second. Was he putting something there? Did he find this place interesting, or was he just simply winded from carrying the bombs in his back pocket? We'll find out more, I think, during these interviews and then the behavioral analysis. On the juvenile thing, one of the things that almost certainly will do, particularly when you hear someone being talked about as being on the spectrum, did his teachers in high school, grammar school think he had some sort of spectrum disorder? That'll almost certainly be something that the FBI will zero in on, because it'll give you a little bit of sense of his arc as a person, as a personality, and his academic and his intellectual capabilities.
Jim, can we talk about the gunpowder? Is that the word we're looking for? I don't know. They talk about this homemade black powder that went into the pipe bombs, which I think, you correct me if I'm wrong, is what makes it a pipe bomb. I mean, it's the bomb part of the pipe bomb. How do you get that? That doesn't seem like something, you can't get that at the Radio Shack.
No, not necessarily, but you can, in fact. I'm wondering if he somehow got a box or two of shotgun shells, carefully took them apart, took the powder out of there, perhaps other ammo. There may be other commercial ways to get powder in small amounts that he could, in fact, place in there. I don't think it was a substantive amount that really would have, brought a building down or anything like that, from what I'm reading. And it was homemade, I think, is the word that was used in the criminal complaint.
Yeah, that's right.
And the Chinese may have homemade it, thousands of years ago, but I'm sure he somehow got it commercially, but he may have taken it out of some other device and repurposed it, of course, for the design of this particular device itself.
So you don't think these don't look like sophisticated bombs, but Kash Patel kept saying they were viable bombs. Like, it seems to me what they're saying is the timer didn't work, like the detonation didn't work, but that the bombs were functional. And that leads me to the question about the timer. So they're saying it was a white kitchen timer, old school. Most of us use our iPhones, I think, these days for the timer, but like a white kitchen timer. But the kitchen timer actually only had 60 minutes on it. I don't understand. Can you enlighten me? Because he set these between 7:30 and 8:30 the night before. By noon the next day, they had not gone off. They were then found around 12:30. And the finding of those bombs is what sort of triggered the chaos on Capitol Hill. Evacuate the lawmakers. They found bombs. Kamala Harris was at the DNC. There was a bomb outside. Oh my God. But they never went off. So explain, do you have any thoughts on that timer, Jim, which it only has 60 minutes on it?
It's reflective of kind of the immaturity and, of course, whatever sites he was going to design this thing, and also perhaps limitations. He didn't want to take any chances with a spring or plunger type mechanism, which is what the Unabomber and other serial bombers used in their devices. And this was his very first one. The very first device of any of these guys is always the most amateur. Well, we think. We'll find out. Could he have had some practice ones? Usually they go into the woods or into a field somewhere and experiment with them just to make sure they work. Whether this guy did or not, maybe we'll find that out down the line. But yeah, again, it almost sounds like he had like a puzzle kit and he's following it every step of the way. He was building a car, put a little bit of gas in it, and all the component parts were there, but it really actually would never drive anyone anywhere. And I'm not trying to give him a defense here either.
I mean, it makes me wonder, like, how does a kitchen timer serve also as the trigger mechanism for a bomb? Because the timer can go off, but like, what, the ringing of the bell somehow triggers the bomb? That sounds like movie stuff to me.
Well, there could have been an internal wiring to it. He did have wires, the alligator clips. There was a detonator, a power source, the 9-volt battery. So he had the components that certainly on the surface would make this thing work. But it still looks like, to me, and I've seen pictures of it, I haven't broken it down. And I'm not a bomb tech, but I've looked at enough of these things, certainly back in my Unabomb days, and even the Austin bombing last year from afar, or several years ago, and I see how these things are put together. Some of these guys are masterful. There was a Las Vegas extortion attempt back in the early 80s, and this bomb maker was just so highly sophisticated. There was basically no way to dismantle the device or render it safe. The guy up in Erie, Pennsylvania, about 20 years ago, that had the pizza delivery guy with the lock across his neck, they couldn't find a way to detonate that either. These are what I just referenced, highly sophisticated devices. This one, J5 bomber, we'll call it, they look sophisticated. They probably would have worked with some few other mechanisms added, but the 1-hour timer right away showed me this guy really wasn't serious. He wanted to make a flashbang, perhaps, maybe a loud noise and some loud for surveillance video to pick up, some bright lights late at night, but it never happened. And it's good for all of us, of course. But and quite frankly, it may have been his goal, just to have some bright lights go off. We'll just leave this thing here and have people scratching their head and wondering, what the heck is this all about?
Well, mission accomplished on that latter goal, if that was it. Your thoughts on it, John?
No, Jim, do you want to say something else?
Well, I just want to throw in what you asked John earlier. I'm a student of history, certainly criminal justice. And without elaborating on this, the Leopold and Loeb kidnapping case in 1924 always fascinated me. I'm not comparing Cole at all to those two guys who were relatively smart college students, preppy type people, but they kidnapped a young boy just for fun, just to see if they can get away with it.
Yeah,
and
evil.
And true evil. And they both were eventually caught. Eyeglasses were left at the scene, and the police back then tracked them down, whatever. So every once in a while, you come upon a crime or a series of crimes, and I'm wondering, geez, and I'm not saying Cole even knew about these guys, ever heard of Leopold and Loeb, but it's something in the back of our mind. It's like, this is, again, a gaming situation for him, but taking it not just virtual, but IRL, as the kids say, into the real world and seeing where it goes from there. And he had his fun for 5 years. May not be so fun where he is right now, though.
Yeah, I bet that's right.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, John.
About a month ago, Megyn, we brought in one of the FBI explosive experts who did the Oklahoma City bombing. So he did a full analysis of the lab report when we got the lab report released through Congress. And he said that these were made to look real. They were made generally how you would create to have them detonate, but they had minor imperfections that would never have allowed them to go off. They had a load. That's what means, what Kash means when they're viable. If they blew up, they would have had explosive force. But there were little imperfections in the bomb that wouldn't allow it to go off even when the timer hit the triggering device. And that's kind of interesting because there is always another piece of this mystery. We had a lot of mysteries on the J6 bombing, J5, J6 bombing. But remember the first woman that calls in the RNC bomb, she's a federal government employee, but she actually works in the first responder program. She works in the program that helps first responders get their phones active in a major crisis. And she says, when I walked by the RNC location, the bomb wasn't there. When I walked back, I did see it, and it still had 20 minutes on the timer. Now, how could that be that the timer would still be at 20 minutes if it had been planted the night before? Now, either she's wrong, though she seems like a pretty sophisticated lady with some law enforcement background and a good federal job, or
and that would be an important fact to know. She'd be smart enough to realize she needs to get that one right.
That's right. Yeah, right. Yeah, because you're going to be interviewed by the FBI. You better be right, right? So I think those are important things. Did the timer stop? Was it a defective timer? Did someone come back and reset it a second time because it didn't occur the first time? One of the things I was interested in is about a week or two ago, the FBI put out footage of the bombs 1 hour before they went off. And I wondered this is when we now know they already knew Brian Cole was their main guy. Why would they do that? Were they looking for something or looking for the crowd or the public to look for the hour before? Maybe they were considering that woman's theory that maybe someone turned the timer a second time. I guess we'll learn some of that maybe today or the next week. But that woman's story, which we only got a few weeks ago and made public, is really interesting because it doesn't fit the rest of the timeline. I think we'll learn some more about that today and in the next couple of days. But the analysis from the Oklahoma City bomb explosive expert was really interesting, which is they were kind of basically scripted bombs, but a couple imperfections kept them from actually detonating.
And did he have a theory on whether they were intentional imperfections?
Did not. He said, I'm scratching my head. You really need to. And remember, we only got a couple lab reports. There's other analysis he would have loved to have seen that would have got the nerd in him going. But I do think that, that's an important piece of data that we'll have to understand as this goes on. And Jim's mentioned of the thrill seeker, the gamer thrill seeker. There could be some element of this here.
Well, it doesn't sound like this guy had any excitement whatsoever in his life outside of this major lane. Go ahead, Jim.
I was only going to add, to follow up on what John said, some things in the last few weeks, maybe in the last month or two. We don't know when Cole became the suspect of the FBI. They're seeming kind of nebulous about that, unless you have new information when he was identified.
John's reporting maybe 4 to 5 weeks ago.
4 to 5 weeks ago is when they zeroed in on him.
Well, there's a term when we're working a wire tap called tickle the wire, in which you purposely do things to the bad guys you're monitoring, and nothing illegal, nothing questionable, but you make little things happen around them. So I'm not sure they had a wiretap up on Cole, or certainly they were in real time monitoring his phone calls, his emails, but they could have put these extra videos out. There could have been some interviews being done, and they're watching him the whole time to see who he's communicating with. So they're proactively trying to get him to move and to do something. Maybe go to a storage unit somewhere and clear it out, or get rid of a phone. All type of information that down the line could be proved valuable in the investigation as well as the prosecution of this person.
Great point.
That's good. That makes perfect sense. Tickle the wire. I'm wondering whether you think, Jim, this was the first attempt, and whether there might have been other attempts maybe after J5 2021, because Jeanine Pirro said on Fox last night that they did find additional bomb-making materials in his home upon arrest. And it didn't sound like these were leftovers. And even Kash was saying he's had 5 years since January of 2021 and, to continue buying and doing things. And they had to investigate and are investigating all that too. So what are the odds this guy will turn out to be some sort of a serial bomber? I don't know. Does the bomber typically try once and then it doesn't work out and they just go back to their life as a bail bondsman?
No, but I'll tell you one thing about serial bombers or potential serial bombers. They're very proud of their workmanship. They're very proud of how it is they construct their devices. I actually went to Venice, Italy for a week, helping the Italian police on their, and they named it the Italian Unabomber case. And this guy was so clever, and every device he made, not necessarily more lethal, and there was, I think, 20 different devices. He made them more miniaturized. And this is their signature. MO is one thing, signature behavior is something else. And these bombers really take pride in themselves. And Kaczynski, he wrote FC on the bottom of each of his devices. He wanted to make sure there were no copycats out there that would put some kind of a similar device out there and take credit for it. So these people many times are narcissistic.
Why FC?
Well, early on, because these be his initials, and of course we all knew they were not his initials. He claimed later in a letter to the New York Times, it stood for Freedom Club, which was kind of a Luddite association, I think in the early 1920s in Florida, something like that. But we never believed that. Other people thought it meant F computers. And you can fill in the F word, because he, of course, hated technology, and these computers have put him, this math genius, out of business, but at the same time, he got his PhD in mathematics. So he had all kinds of issues and angles. I'm not sure we're going to see anything quite that elaborate with the J5 Brian Cole person. I think it may be more mental health related. And again, I keep saying this gamemanship. I don't know. I don't have an inside track here, but just that night, his activities, walking around, it would have been so easy to, whether he pulled his car right up or parked it far away, which I think he did, his Nissan, but just jump out, put him down, DNC, RNC, then get the hell out of there. He didn't. He walked around. I forget the exact time, John, you probably know, 2 to 3, maybe even 4 hours that evening.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. And I know that part of DC. I used to live not far from there, and I could see, and why would he go here? Why would he make this left, this right? Why would he sit? Why would he kneel? Why would he, wave to I don't know if it was Capitol Police car, someone drove by, and just very odd behavior. And but that's what, if you're really serious about what you're doing, you get in and you get out. Ingress, egress. That's what from bank robber, burglar, rapist, whatever you are, in and out. But this person's walking all around. And let's face it, if there was a ped stop, a police officer, hey, I saw you 5 times now in the last 2 hours. What's in your backpack? Now, it'd be questioned whether they have legality to open it up or not. But in many cases, could we see, you have 2 devices in here? And the whole gig would have been up right then.
And Jim points out something really important about serial bombers. They do take great pride in, and usually there's meaning in the choices that they made. This kid has, if this turns out to be the bomber, there are little differences that the analysis from the Oklahoma City technician, when he looked at it, said they're a little bit different, actually. He didn't make them quite the same, and he saw some imperfections that suggested this was sort of amateurish, and that might give us some signs, too, that maybe this isn't a serial bomber, but a guy on a gamemanship or thrill-seeking adventure.
Let me just ask you as an aside, John, when I asked Kash about Thomas Crooks and the reporting, the shooter of President Trump and 3 others at the Trump rally in Butler, he did not want to talk about that. That was pretty clear. I asked him about Tucker's reporting about Crooks' social media that suggested the guy had started off as a righty, a supporter of Trump, and then switched, I think it was about a year before Butler, into like a weird far leftist who hated Trump. And then seemed to be communicating or getting incoming from someone online. The suggestion in Tucker's report was clearly that possibly he'd been radicalized by somebody or spurred to violence by somebody. The FBI has already responded to that online, suggesting no, that they looked into that. They did not find any such connection whatsoever. And then Miranda Devine reporting with the New York Post that the shooter, Crooks, was communicating on these trans furry websites. It was going by they, them. And I mean, she's a very solid reporter. He did not want to touch that. So what's going on there?
Listen, I think if you're Kash Patel with the new FBI, you've just solved the pipe bomb case. You solved Charlie Kirk shooting in 33 hours, which is quite remarkable. And by the way, he met a lot of resistance during that investigation, because a lot of the old school agents working the case did not want him to put the photo out. They like to keep that photo to later in the investigation. But Kash's instinct was, if I put the photo out, I'm going to tip the father over and he's going to turn the kid in. And that instinct turned out to be right. Kash Patel wasn't in charge of the investigation when Brian Crooks went down. He is at the mercy of what evidence was gathered then.
Thomas.
I'm sorry, he wasn't. He was at the mercy of what the FBI prior to him is. It's a frustrating case because not everything was done exactly the way the Kash Patel FBI would do it. But there have been some real exaggerations in some of this reporting. Some of the reporting, the FBI said there was no social history. That's not true. They said they did have a social history, but it kind of cut off in 2020. So some of the early reporting misreported with the FBI, which starts your conspiracy theories going. And it's kind of hard to get into a debate about something where, at the end of the day, right now, based on the evidence that the FBI has, they don't have any other co-conspirators. It's a guy that went out there, maybe changed philosophies, tried to kill the president, and then got killed by a sniper team. It's just not a debate where if you're the FBI director, you're going to win a lot on it, because there's just not a whole lot there. And you didn't even run the investigation.
Why wouldn't you own the transferee thing? Yeah. The transferee thing is weird to me. Like that is either true or it's not true. And this FBI has been very forthcoming, for example, on the trans connections of the Nashville, Tennessee shooter, the one whose manifesto the previous
I know something
FBI
about Kash.
withheld from us.
There's something he said, for something very important. We've fully briefed the president, who's a victim. And then he said, you know, we want to respect some of the other victims in this matter. It is very possible that the president of the United States basically told them, enough's enough on this, let's move on. And he's going to take the direction of his boss. But I thought it was very instructive that Kash went out of his way in that segment of your interview to say, I've told the president everything, and we're going to respect the wishes of the victims here. I think that it was a signal, and I've heard some inkling that the president's basically said, all right, enough of this. We got other things to work on. And, you know, let's fix the country, get peace. But it did seem to me that that was an interesting insight to Kash. He doesn't very often invoke the president when he's trying to explain why he's saying something or not saying something. I would take some lead into that.
And the other thing, John, is I know he gets ripped on by his critics, but he actually is very forthcoming. I mean, the answers he was giving, like he answered everything he could without justifying the investigation. Like most FBI agents or directors, they don't talk.
No.
You never see them. Like even for him to come on, I realize this is a win that they want to celebrate, but just to sit down for 35 minutes and talk with me as much as he did is extraordinary.
Here's a great piece of information that tells you the difference between the last director and the current director. In 8-9 years of the Chris Wray thing, I think they turned over about 3,000 to 4,000 documents to all congressional investigations. Kash Patel has turned over 40,000 in the first 9 months of his tenure. It is a much more transparent FBI. Now, there's a lot to give to the public because we were kept in the dark about a lot of things, but I don't get a sense that this FBI is hiding things, and I'm not sure that Miranda Devine's reporting goes anywhere, right? It's interesting, but then it ends, and I think the fact that it ends is because there's just no more evidence trail for the FBI to pursue. That's what my reporting shows. I love Miranda. I'm close friends with her. She is a great reporter. We work together on Hunter Biden.
Awesome.
Yeah, she's great. I'm just not sure it goes anywhere, and I think maybe that's why Kash Patel cut it off, because there's just nowhere else to go.
I mean, we've all, as reporters, we've all had stories that we thought were something and then turned out not to be something. That's just part of the business. Yep. But here's what's interesting, Jim, on these shooters. If you think about, because I asked him, of course, about Tyler Robinson, the Charlie Kirk accused assassin, and he said 100% Tyler Robinson is the man who did it. No foreign government involvement, no turning point involvement, of course. I had to ask. And that they are actively considering whether there's a Transtifa connection with some group of trans activists online who may have known in advance, participated, et cetera. So very forthcoming on all of that. But Jim, if you look at these three alleged killers, Tyler, accused of killing Charlie, Crooks, who did kill Corey Compatore and tried to kill Trump, and now this guy Cole, they have a lot in common. They're all young 20s at the time of their alleged crimes. They're all social loners / losers. They're very isolated. There was indeed a gaming connection, at least for Tyler Robinson. And I don't know about Crooks, and maybe for Cole, you're saying, we'll find out. But as an FBI profiler, you're looking at this and you see those three guys with very similar social footprints, if you will. What does it tell you?
Well, it's not just those three, Megyn, as you know. We can go back 20 years or farther to, Columbine and those two young men and what happened there. And in the last few hits I've done on Fox News with Laura and Jesse, et cetera, and after these mass shootings, and certainly after Nashville, we need, and now RFK Jr., of course, is in charge with, Maha, and we need, there's something with our young men, especially, maybe some women too. We need full toxicological workups of everything that's going into our children today. And then add in Ritalin, add in the vaxes early on. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. Throw in Ritalin prescriptions. Mom and dad give it to them right away. Also, a lot of parents never say no to their kids. And then they start pot smoking when they're 15. It's legal in however many states it is now. And all of a sudden their brains don't form fully until mid-20s. That may have changed over evolutionary times, but for now, give or take, what the hell is going on that these young men, and we'll put, Cole in there too, from just, the J5 person. What's going on with their brains that they just can't assimilate with society, with the culture in which they're born? Most of them they're not, looking for food every single day. They're not being deprived. They have TVs, cell phones, computers. What makes them want to go out and kill fellow humans? for no purpose otherwise. It's not greed, it's not robbery, it's not sex, or maybe sexual components of it. And by the way, Megyn and John, I never rule out, and I was one of the first people to say, when the word was coined, incel, involuntary celibate, I said, looking back at everything with Ted Kaczynski, I think he was an incel, again, before that word was coined. And a lot of these men I see now, young men, how many of them fall into that category? I mean, I'm not sure how incel falls into, if you're into furry companions, maybe some other acronym for that, I don't know. But maybe you're not getting the sex life or the socialization you'd like with whatever sex is your preference. So you look for people that dress as animals. I don't know, but it addles the brain. All of this comes together, and it's causing these people to do things that I don't think in the history of humankind ever happened on a scale like this. Certainly not in Western culture over the last, hundreds of years, like we're seeing as of recent.
I don't say this person's name because I never mention, the mass shooters by name. But the person who shot up Sandy Hook too was 100% an incel.
Absolutely.
And also was living with his mother in the basement, nonstop gaming. And you mentioned the pot. Alex Berenson, a great reporter. And he was like ahead of the curve on all the COVID issues. They maligned him, called him a quack. All of his reporting has turned out to be true. I mean, it's just been even his stuff about, we just reported earlier this week, kids dying during the vaccine trials. A child died during the Moderna vaccine trial, he reports, and that the Moderna took the person out of the trial so that they didn't have to count this child. That's his reporting. We've been told it's credible, and we've been told that the FDA will soon be issuing a black box warning for the COVID vaccine for children. I mean, if that actually happens, that's shocking. After it was actually mandated by so many schools. Shocking. For the record, I went to our own schools and begged them not to do this, not to make it mandatory. I was not listened to, but I did not get my children that vaccine. Thank God. By the way, for parents who are worried, I always feel the need to say, they do say if the damage was done, it would have been done at the time. You would know by now. So don't, if your child is okay all these years later, I think the answer is you don't have anything to worry about now. I would still get it checked out. Still, if your kid had COVID or if your kid had the COVID vaccine, get an EKG, get an echocardiogram. Usually insurance will pay for it, but just don't freak out because of this news. I mean, but there were kids who died. There were kids who died of myocarditis. Anyway, sorry, long wind up about Alex Berenson, but he's been trying to draw attention to the dangers of today's pot and what it's doing to our young people. And who we forgot to mention is the demon who killed those kids in Minneapolis in that church as they were going to school, who you could see him smoking the pot as he was filming his weird manifesto and his pictures of himself as a demon. So we are finding some common through lines with these killers.
Yeah, you're right. Listen, I've talked to a lot of law enforcement in the last couple of years, going back to Covenant. There is something about an isolated male in the 21st century that is creating a syndrome of some sort, whether it's the loss of the identity of masculinity or a lot of these kids came from decent homes. It wasn't like they were poor or that they were deprived of enormous resources, but there is a common thread of isolation, and isolation with some unusual gaming habits with some of them, not all of them, but a lot of them are in this gaming world. But they seem to slip into a world where reality becomes secondary, and then mores start to erode to the point where killing someone doesn't seem to be an evil act anymore. And I think that in talking to a lot of cops who responded to these specific events, they're seeing something more of a syndrome. I've had law enforcement people and criminal psychologists say that there's some syndrome going on with young men in America right now. I think Jim, as one of the greatest profilers in the history of the FBI, he's onto something here. This is a bigger issue than a series of incidents, and it's something societal.
And
I mean, Jim, no one would blame autism for these murders or attempted murders at all. I have a dear relative who has serious Asperger's. That doesn't make you a criminal, doesn't make you a murderer at all. Right. But it can be a common thread in someone who is vulnerable, if not in the proper parenting situation, support situation, and so on, to where mass isolation can take place. And then other corruptions, whether it's the furry community, the gaming community, those two are related, pot, what have you. You take it from here.
Yeah, and John referenced, I didn't put it in my initial list because it's ubiquitous everywhere we go, and that is the internet. And the most isolated of people, and this Cole character sounds like one of them. I have no doubt he's spending a lot of time online, and who knows the dark web, the regular web, but he's accessing all these different sites and talking to different people. Who knows if they're edging him on or pushing him? I'm not saying they knew he was the J5 bomber, but he's just getting all these types of different personalities that are just pushing different ideologies to him, and just says, hey, you know what? I got to be a person. I haven't done much in my life. I haven't accomplished much. I really have no friends, and I only work at my dad's company or whatever it is. I got to make my mark in life. So here's how I'm going to do it. And now this happens to be a black male, by the way. It's, we talk about a lot of white males being, chastised over the years and denigrated for just being white males. And I have a few friends ask me, I worked on the first ever case of a black sniper. We've had other snipers in this country, and that was, Muhammad and Malbo. And we may have the first black bomber here. I'm not going to call him a serial bomber as of yet, because we only know of one. And again, this isn't, not getting into any racial, aspects of this here. It's just from an observational demographic perspective. If I had to do a profile on this guy early on, it's just the way he was dressed and the gloves and mask and everything else, I probably would have said former bombers have been white males. Percentage-wise, statistically, this is probably a white male. I would have been wrong by the race. And no one else called this guy a black male when they didn't know who it was. So it just deviated from the norm.
Well, I mean, Jake Tapper's calling him a white male, even after we knew he was a black male.
Yeah, that's got a pair of glasses.
See, it's twice for CNN. That's twice identifying a black suspect as a white man when it's not true. I know you got to run, John, but I have to ask you this. Yesterday, as the news broke of this arrest, MS Now reported that their sources were telling them this person had links to Antifa. And it was a very interesting report coming from MS Now, which wouldn't necessarily have a political motive, an ideological motive to press the Antifa button if they didn't have it solidly as a report. So I assume they did have some law enforcement type suggesting to them that this guy was Antifa. Do you believe now, 24 hours later plus, that will pan out, or that they were misinformed? What do you think is going on there?
Clear. There was a couple of reports. One was he was an anarchist or had anarchist ties, and the other was that he had Antifa ties. I don't think as of 11 this morning, when I did my last round of reporting, that they have an assessment of any proof about ideological affiliations. I think the way Jim has so eloquently described this suspect is sort of where the FBI is right now. A loner who might have done this in a thrill-seeking way, in a gamification way, to find some relevance or thrill in an otherwise isolated life. It does seem like they're in that category now, but they've warned me that they're going to do weeks of more investigation. There's going to be layers to this suspect added to his profile that we don't have yet, so it's awful early. But I haven't had anyone tell me yet, hey, look BLM, Antifa yet, or look at neo-Nazism. I think they're just seeing a kid that seemed to be very isolated, acts out, and now they're trying to layer in what gave him the ideas and who was he talking to, who his friends are. And that's why you're seeing so much activity in the 24 hours since his arrest. If you look, the FBI has been everywhere in Prince William County. I live there, and they're everywhere because when they lock on, and they don't turn over. They don't leave any stone unturned. And I think they're really learning who this man is. I think 5 days from now, we're going to get a much clearer answer about that. But early on, I didn't get anyone who said, no, I go with that anarchist Antifa thing. They told me, hold off. We're not sure about that.
Just let me add here.
I should tell you guys both, this just came in. Hold just 1 second. CNN just reported that he was brought, Ryan Cole Jr., before Magistrate Judge Maxilla Upadhyaya Friday afternoon for an initial court appearance. He was wearing a tan jumpsuit. A detention hearing was set for December 15th, where prosecutors will seek for Cole to be detained ahead of his trial. He's not getting out on bail. That he will be detained. Even in this crazy justice system, this guy's going to be detained. Go ahead, Jim.
Oh, I was going to add.
And I know, John, you probably have to run.
All I was going to say is
the
bar is pretty low to get into Antifa or BLM. Their vetting process. So he could have walked in the door of whatever friend of a friend of a friend he may know from a bail skipper of some sort. And they said, oh, all right, you're Antifa now. So if he did belong, that's not like a big, sergeant stripe he has on his arm or something proving anything.
Yeah.
It's not like a big aha.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't think Antifa,
guys,
here's one thing that's really important. Antifa BLM probably wouldn't have been targeting Kamala Harris at the DNC. Remember, that bomb is planted where the vice president-elect is going the next morning, and it was public she was going there. It wasn't a secret. That was on a public schedule known. So those are things that, again, we're going to learn a lot more, but there's some.
But you know what, John, what you just said just reminded me. This too has some parallels with the Crooks situation, where, again, according to the reporting, his social media, he was like a far righty, then he became a far lefty. He hated everyone. He took a shot at Trump and did kill Trump supporters, but also had Googled where Biden was going to be shortly before that event at Butler. Like these things, that they're not as clean or as clear as the punditry class would like them to be.
There's a term that a couple of law enforcement officials have used with me in recent thing, and it is still growing on me, but disillusionment criminals, meaning they're just so disillusioned, they're looking to strike out either for thrill or just to excise their anger. And we're looking for that right, left, or nice, clean box to put them in. And maybe this isolation and disillusion has created a sort of criminal murderer or a bomber that really doesn't have that left-right switch. They're trapped in disillusion, and this act is their act of getting out of that disillusion. That I've heard that in a few interviews over the last 6 months, going back through Covenant and the Minnesota case and a couple of other cases that aren't even that high profile. But we may have a generational issue with some of our young people, particularly those young men, black and white. It's going to be interesting to see what the behavioral sciences unit at the FBI learns from this. And they'll learn a lot from this guy, just like they're learning from Crooks and the others that we've arrested or were extinguished in their crimes.
I mean, we haven't even mentioned Brian Kohlberger. Right. That's another, like, obviously deeply disturbed
Mangione up in New
young
York
man
too, right?
who.
You got Mangione up in New York. There's another young guy.
Yeah.
Incel.
Yes, who was succeeding in life, incel, right, exactly, who was succeeding in life on paper prior to throwing it all away to murder Brian Thompson. This just in, Caitlin Dornbos over the New York Post, I think, reporting that at his initial court appearance, they said Brian Cole, he has a slight speech impediment. Highest education was high school. She writes, he moves stiffly. His family cried out to him as he left the courtroom, quote, "We love you, Brian. We're here for you." That dovetails with what News Nation just reported. His family yelled to him, "We love you." He was wearing a prison outfit and glasses. He spoke to law enforcement for 4 hours Thursday, the day of his arrest. Reporting you confirmed at the top of our segment, John Solomon, that the reporting is he's confessed, and that they know now that he believed in what's being described as the 2020 conspiracy theory around Trump not having lost that election. Now, whether that was the motive, how that played in, that piece of it has not yet been tied together, just to be clear as we let you go.
Yeah, right on. I'm going to learn more. Stay tuned.
Yeah. Well, we know we're going to hear from you. So thank you, John Solomon. Thank you too, Jim. It's great to see you both. We really appreciate it.
Thank you,
appreciate
Kelly.
all you've done,
Thank you,
Jim
Megyn.
Fitzgerald,
Thank
for
you,
us in your service as the FBI. Thanks, guys.
You're welcome.
Okay, we'll keep it rolling for a couple minutes here, and then we'll have to say goodbye ourselves. But what an incredible story. What an incredible day. And, there's some strange, I don't know, is it Shakespearean? What is it? That we had an FBI that didn't want to investigate this case for whatever reason, or so it would appear. You heard Kash say he thought it was intentional in that they had other priorities. They obviously did investigate it. They did have a bunch of leads. They did get some data. But they didn't do the legwork that this FBI did. It was sitting right there, and they didn't do it. This FBI examined the same things that the old FBI had to get a name. That was clear from Kash's interview. They got the name Brian Cole Jr. from stuff that was sitting in the files of Chris Wray's FBI. And once they got that name, they worked with Jeanine Pirro to start getting subpoenas for that guy's credit cards, for that guy's cell phones, for that guy's social media, to zero in on what shopping he had done and when, what he had purchased and where, shoe leather, investigatory work by sending FBI agents to the store saying, do you know this guy? Has he come in? Were there any other purchases? Can we search? That seemed to be clearly how they found the cash purchases and so on. And then they figured out who could be ruled out and so on, the sneakers. So why? Why did Chris Wray's FBI move on? Truly, was it they had other priorities like Russiagate, like Arctic Frost, trying to pin everything on Trump and his administration? Like, that's a very interesting question. Was there some fear on their part that the J6 bomber would not be beneficial to find for some reason? Like they had some whiff of who it might be and they didn't want it to come out. There's no evidence of that. But I mean, what if it turns out that all along the identity of the J6 bomber, the motivation of the J6 bomber actually would have dovetailed well with the Biden theory or the Jack Smith theory around January 6th, and they just didn't bother looking for it? I mean, it's just like, it's pretty ironic. And that thing about whether the Trump pardon could potentially help this guy is a very interesting question that, trust me, we're not done with. Okay, we got to run. One other thing I want to tell you. Do we have to go? Do we have time for one more minute? No, we got to read the ads. All right, I have more to say, but I'm going to have to say it on Monday. Thank you for listening. Thanks for bearing with my illness and my voice this week. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk on Monday with Walter Kern.